with a Doctor, featuring Southwest Florida's leading physicians, hosted by Dr. Gregory Leach and Jim York.
Good evening and welcome to Dialogue with a Doctor. My name is Dr. Gregory Leach and I'm here with my co-host Jim York. And we're here tonight to talk to Dr. Raymond Phillips. He's a gastroenterologist in Naples, Florida. And Jim?
Dr. Phillips, maybe you could give us a little background of yourself and where your practice is located.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. As Greg was saying, I'm a gastroenterologist. I'm an expert in gastrointestinal disease. That involves digestive ailments or liver disease. And to get to that point, as far as a physician that's trained like that, you know, I, of course, went to college. I went to Princeton. I went to medical school at Washington University in St. Louis. I did my internal medicine training at Jefferson Hospital in Philadelphia. I was chief resident there, so that was a 4-year program. I'd gone through college on an ROTC scholarship, so I went to the Army at that point, and I was an internist for 2 years, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, special place, you ought to visit it. And then I did my gastroenterology training at Walter Reed. And then after becoming trained as a gastroenterologist, I remained on the staff at Walter Reed. And then in 1991, I made a transition to private practice, and I've been in Naples for the past 20 years, Gastroenterology Group of Naples. I practice with Dr. Susan Lebersky, Dr. Neil Randall, Dr. Michael Marks, Dr. Ahmed Khatib. And we have an office on Goodlet Road in Colonial Square, 1064 Goodlet. And also we have offices in Bonita as well as in Marco Island. But over these years, you know, we've emphasized the practice of clinical gastroenterology. But as I was discussing with you earlier, we do other things as well. You know, as my training as a gastroenterologist at Walter Reed, we participated in research, clinical research, and in the last 5 years, I've taken up that interest once more, and we've been doing a number of clinical research projects here in Naples, and we've been expanding that enterprise over the last 5 years. And currently we're doing 15 different trials at this point, dealing with various illnesses in the field of gastroenterology.
So I think, and that's what we're going to be talking about is clinical research. I think there was and still is a perception that, you know, this research is done somewhere, and it gets done, and then we have this drug. But really what you're saying is this research is done in communities throughout the United States.
Yeah, and traditionally, Greg, what had occurred over the years is that major medical centers would undergo trials of various medications in concert with the pharmaceutical industry. And what would occur is there would be a progression of these trials. They're called phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, where in phase 1 they'd show safety of the medication, phase 2 they would show effectiveness, and in a dose ranging studies to see what's the most effective dose. And a phase 3 trial would be to show that a drug is effective for a particular indication. And these trials are required by the Food and Drug Administration for approval. And after successfully completing a phase 3 trial, a pharmaceutical company will make an application to the Food and Drug Administration, and it'll be decided on the merits of that trial whether it's effective for the condition they're applying for. But the evolution of medicine over these last 100 years has been one from a haphazard, well, it looks like this herb works, let's just try it out. It worked for Aunt Minnie, let's try it for the nephew here, to the point of trying to be more precise. In the early 1920s and 30s, there was no regulation of medications. There were several severe tragic episodes of medications being adulterated or are not being effective, and as a result the Food and Drug Administration came in as an agency to supervise the safety and then the effectiveness of medications. And this particular structure I told you in terms of trials has developed in the United States to show that medications that we use that are prescribed are really not only safe but effective. Now, in recent years, there's been a growing controversy that certain medications, when they begin to be used on a widespread basis, could potentially, lead to adverse outcomes that were not fully appreciated in the development phase of these medications. So at any rate, this, and the most recent example of that is Vioxx, produced by Merck, and it was shown that for thousands and millions of people were using this medication, that there was a higher risk of coronary artery disease and heart attacks that was associated with this medication. So it came to be pulled from the market. And in that instance, that episode highlighted the deficiency of our system, that the surveillance of medications after they have been released for general use by the population are not being sufficiently looked at in terms of side effects to report them in a timely way, so that if a particular side effect that wasn't appreciated can be identified and efforts taken to minimize that risk.
Let me ask you a question. I've always thought medical research like this was done in hospitals. Is this something new that they're now having physicians do the research on pharmaceutical?
Well, traditionally that's what would happen. In major medical centers, the research
Right.
would be done in major medical centers. But what was occurring is the expense of getting a particular individual to go to a major medical center, to have a trial done, was getting to be so great that now efforts were made to reduce the cost of this research is to go to a community setting. And the other side of the coin was, well, gosh, most people are not participants in major medical centers like the Mayo Clinic or
Right.
Cleveland Clinic. Most people see a local doctor or in small towns or medium-sized cities. They don't go to the big city, or they don't go to hospitals. So the type of patient that would go to a medical center is different than someone that would be in the community. So the thought was, hey, if we're going to get more effective medications, we need to go where the patients are who will use this medication, and not get highly selective, unusual people with a particular condition that only goes to the Mayo Clinic. So that was the basis for spreading out across the United States. And now so many community physicians like myself, we do clinical research in concert with the pharmaceutical companies as a way of being able to recruit patients that have particular rare conditions or perhaps more common conditions, and to show that a particular medication is effective for a particular condition. And so what occurs is that in order to do these studies, you cannot do these studies at one particular site, because the numbers of patients frequently are in hundreds or thousands, and you have to go to many, many sites across the United States to recruit sufficient number of individuals to and so what occurs is that a number of sites, for example, our site might be recruited along with 30 or 40 or 50 other sites across the United States to recruit subjects or patients with a particular condition, and then to that a condition that a pharmaceutical company feels like their product may yield some benefit for. And then we recruit those individuals and participate in these studies. Now
How long does that study take for you?
The study for us might take a year, year and a half, 2 years.
There's no...
there's no uniform. Sometimes it's very
uniform.
short. It might be as short as 6 or 12 months. It might be up to 2 or 3 years. And right now we're doing one study that goes up to 5 years. So these studies involve a great deal of investment of effort and money by the pharmaceutical company. And because it goes over a long period of time and recruiting a number of individuals, there's a lot of expense related to this. And they, what we found over time, though, is that there's been a growing suspicion of the American population of this clinical research. And as a result, many people have the view, well, I don't want to be a guinea pig, I don't want to use this medication, I'll just wait and I'll get a medication that's been approved for use. Well, all the medications that are for use by the Food and Drug Administration goes through this process. And so it requires individuals to participate in this process to be able to get safe and effective medications.
As part of that, there's another suspicion where people just want the drug to be used rather than going through this process.
Well, that was particularly an issue in the 1990s, because as a result of this constructed system, this systematic studying of medications to show it's safe, it's effective, and showing long-term and large trials that it was effective, it was taking 5 to 10 years for a medication to come to market. Well, on the advent of the AIDS epidemic, people were dying within 3 or 4 years. Wow. So to tell them, oh, wait 5 to 10 years and medicine might be available, it was becoming apparent that this was just not a satisfactory approach. And so there was tremendous pressure on the Food and Drug Administration to speed up the process, to make this more streamlined, more efficient, so that medications can become available and to be able to be used in a timely way. And so, and as a result, this process is more streamlined, but it does take time. It takes participation of physicians like myself. It takes the sponsorship of pharmaceutical companies. It takes a participation of subjects with these patients with these conditions. Now, a lot of Americans, a lot of individuals, I don't want to be a guinea pig, and to recognize that participation, oftentimes the medication. The study medication is provided free of charge. There's no charge with regard to laboratory studies that are done. And oftentimes these studies will have long-term components that if you've participated and you received a placebo and didn't get the study medication, you may well have an opportunity to participate in a long-term study where you're providing the medication on a long-term basis, recognizing the effort and contribution you've made as far as participating in a trial and potentially accepting the possibility of receiving a placebo. So these are accommodations that the pharmaceutical companies have made in concert with the FDA to streamline the process, make it more efficient, and to try to recognize the efforts that individual subjects make when they participate in these trials.
People that can't afford these drugs, it would be useful to them testing, or do they get? You see these commercials get paid to be part of our research? How's that play into all this?
Well, how that works is this: is that the medications are provided free of charge,
right?
And so there's that benefit to the individual, is that they have access to this medication before it's released,
right?
And it's being used in a supervised fashion. And because it's not approved for use, it's being used in this setting. Of course, there's no charge, and there may even be a compensation to the person for participating. But at the end of the day, participation is fundamentally, it's not a, gee, I'm going to get paid for this.
Right.
It's more of an altruistic participation, because you don't want individuals who are motivated by money to participate in these trials, because they'll make up symptoms. They won't be honest.
Right.
And having professional research participants who are motivated by money will give false results to these studies, and which would be terrible result to have individuals who are motivated by money participate, because what will then happen is that you'll get results that are not reliable. So this really relies on individuals who are honest, who genuinely want to participate in an altruistic fashion. Hey, I want to help other people. If this helps me, great, that would be terrific, but I'm not doing this to make myself wealthy as far as participation in this trial.
I think that's an important point, because there's so much suspicion against big pharma, where we use and distort results, and so much of that is untrue and not valid. And I think this really points out, is a good point what you're making here.
And to follow up on that point, yeah, there have been mistakes that have been made by pharmaceutical companies in the past. The FDA has responded to that. It's providing greater oversight. The pharmaceutical companies in turn have responded to be more open and honest and transparent as far as the research that has been done. And one thing that you see in response, using that example, the Vioxx circumstance, now there's heavier post-market surveillance, where the pharmaceutical companies are sponsoring trials, enrolling thousands of people to watch them closely, so that if any unusual symptoms develop, they'll be reported in a prompt fashion, and it won't be a haphazard sort of reporting of individuals saying, hey, I think I had a side effect. It'll be more systematic. Now, the other aspect of this is that a lot of people don't realize is that there's a tremendous globalization of this research. Is that this research now is being conducted not only in the United States, in Canada,
We're going to talk more about that. I think we're going to take a short break, because
Okay.
I'd like to start talking about that after this. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back right after this, talk to Dr. Phillips again, more about the globalization of research and the risks associated with that.
I had been a practicing orthopedic surgeon for a number of years, and I thought that I was invincible to the multitude of medical problems I saw around me every day. Was quite shocked when I received a phone call telling me that I had cancer of the prostate.
Dr. David Spellberg of Naples Urology Associates is the local specialist in treating prostate cancer with the new CyberKnife radiation treatment.
Once I got myself together was to do as much research as I could, and what I was looking for was a treatment that would give me the least risk of complications and side effects. And that's where the CyberKnife came into the picture.
Advanced CyberKnife technology, precise. It sends just the right dose of radiation through the cancerous areas, fast. Each treatment is only 1 hour, non-invasive. This outpatient procedure has almost no side effects.
The day after my treatment, I was out playing golf, and I'm looking forward now to continuing to enjoy a long and happy and comfortable life thanks to the care of my team of doctors and to the CyberKnife procedure.
Learn more about CyberKnife and Dr. Spellberg. Call today.
The survival rate from early caught breast cancer is about 97%. Mammography saves lives by detecting that breast cancer early.
Radiology Regional Center, earning your trust yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Radiology Regional Center is happy to bring you digital mammography. The advantages include shorter exam time, fewer retakes, and lower dose radiation. Radiology Regional Center, the best just got better.
Welcome back to Dialogue with the Doctor. Dr. Raymond Phillips. He's a practicing gastroenterologist in Naples, and we're talking about clinical research. We've learned a lot about clinical research, and we're talking about the globalization and the risks associated with that, and why does that occur to begin with?
Well, as we said earlier, in order to do this research and to do it in a rapid fashion, what we found is you need to accumulate a large number of individuals with a particular condition. And sometimes it's a fairly rare condition. And so in order to identify people that have that condition, you go to more and more sites across the United States. Well, it's becoming now, with the globalization of pharmaceutical companies and with their own agencies in Europe as well as in Russia and China, that these other agencies, the counterparts of the Food and Drug Administration, they're requiring studies to be done in their areas of the world to show effectiveness. And so pharmaceutical companies trying to develop a strategy to bring a drug to market quickly and to minimize the expense are now doing these research projects, recruiting sites from across the world, not just the United States, but Europe, Eastern Europe, China, and Russia, Japan, and as a result, there's increasing globalization of this research that's being done. Now, granted, at this point, principally it's North America, United States and Canada, Europe, United Kingdom, but increasingly Eastern Europe's being involved, Russia's being involved in these studies, and interestingly, the Food and Drug Administration has purview of those sites as well if they're conducting simultaneous studies or simultaneous sites in the United States. But with this globalization of the research, it's done partly for the reason I said before, to meet the agency requirements in these different parts of the world, but also for expense. Frankly, individuals that are recruited in Eastern Europe, the expense it takes to conduct a study there is less than in the United States. And so there's this attractive quality toward doing this research outside of the United States. But it still has to be done in the United States for it to be able to meet the Food and Drug Administration's requirements.
Before we go to the end here, just give us a little background of your clinical research that you're doing in your office.
Well,
there.
thanks. We're doing currently 15 different studies looking at various areas, inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, Additional studies we've done in the past with gastroesophageal reflux disease. We've talked about that in the past on other studies, or other shows rather.
Right.
Irritable bowel syndrome, constipation associated with various pain medications, diarrhea in the context of irritable bowel syndrome. So we're doing a variety of different studies, and in fact, we have a number of them are just beginning. One study looking at Crohn's disease. This is interesting. A product out of Japan. It's a combination of ginseng, Sichuan pepper, as well as ginger, and it's a product that's already available in Japan. But they're looking to see the effectiveness in Crohn's disease. So we're just beginning that study this week. These different studies provide opportunities for individuals who may not have success with the currently approved therapy to be able to take advantage of medications that are on the horizon but not yet approved. And so it provides that opportunity, as well as the opportunity for, in this age of healthcare coverage diminishing, for individuals who have no insurance or underinsured to be able to have access to this type of health care and to be able to have treatment for a particular condition they may have. So, and granted, we don't do every study on every condition, but over time we've been addressing a number of different gastrointestinal conditions, and so we've been making an effort for those individuals who may be interested, developing a registry or database in our practice for individuals who have particular conditions. So if you're interested, certainly we can provide that information. People can learn more about it through our practice and volunteer for these studies. And that's the point I wanted to sort of conclude with, is that medications in the United States don't just materialize. They require the participation of everyone in the medical industry, not only the physicians, the scientists, the pharmaceutical companies, the government, but the participation of patients, and those individuals, the inclination, should, if they have altruistic bent or want to help other individuals, they should be encouraged to participate in studies like this and well-validated, well-conducted studies in an effort to really demonstrate effectiveness and efficacy of products so that we can continue to enjoy evolution in our healthcare system to get more and more effective medications and not be in a situation where we don't have medications that are effective because of the high expense or barriers that accrue because of for various reasons. Anyway, that's part of the reason why I wanted to come out and talk to you about this. This is a vast industry in the United States, the medical research, clinical research industry, and it's an important industry, and it needs to be supported and not viewed with suspicion. And the only way you can really do that is if you can have an understanding of what's involved with this and have a relationship with your physicians, and particularly physicians that are interested in this. And so your physicians can refer you to physicians like myself or research individuals that are doing this. And
so that's another point. Even if a physician isn't doing the research, they could refer you to
absolutely. And we've reached out to the other gastroenterologists in the community here in Collier County as well as Lee County in an effort to create a greater referral system for individuals who might be interested in participating.
I think there's sometimes a fundamental misunderstanding that just because of we're in science, and sometimes people don't understand science, but these trials are actually really experiments, and sometimes patients say, well, why can't we have the drug? Why can't we just do it? I think it has to be proven that they really do work.
Yeah, and this, and some individuals will say that, oh, just give me the medication, I'll take it, I'll take all the risk and so forth. Well, it does no use to just give you a medication and hope it works. You're not like a racehorse we're trying to bet on. The notion is to provide safe and effective medications. And what we've learned is in order to be able to meet that bar, you have to do scientifically based studies that are usually placebo-controlled, randomized. So I don't know, and double-blind, so I don't know what the medication's being received. The individual participant who doesn't know. But by doing those kind of design studies, we can make certain that if if a drug is shown to be effective, it's not because of a placebo effect, or it's not because of some other factor or bias that's introduced, and that's why it's so important to do these trials. Now, the criticism of that approach is, oh, you still have side effects associated with this medication. You just said the Vioxx had that instance, and how come that wasn't determined? Well, to give you an example, a science-based example, if a complication occurs one time out of 1,000, and you have 3,000 people participate in the trial, you may not actually experience that side effect in those 3,000 people. And it may only show up in one person. And so, as a result, that particular side effect may not be appreciated. But when you use this medication on 1 million people for a side effect that occurs in 1 in 1,000, hey, yeah, you're going to find 100 people now. If you're using 1 billion people, you're going to find, many, many more people that will have potentially manifested side effects. So, as a result, that's the importance of post-marketing surveillance, is to look at large groups of people very closely, so that as the drugs are used in larger and larger numbers of people, rare side effects can be quickly identified, and so that many, many people won't experience these side effects before it's realized that this is a side effect of the medication.
Hey, Dr. Phillips, we have 2 more minutes left. Could you just touch base on drugs are approved in Europe, but they're not approved here? How's that coming into this role in the last 2 minutes here? Or?
Well, in Europe, they have a more streamlined and efficient process that leads to the approval of medications and medical devices. And as a result of that process, drugs are available there 2 to 3, 4 years sooner than the United States. Well, there's a tragic incident in the 1960s where thalidomide was approved on a prompt basis in Europe, and the Americans said, oh, this medication's available for relieving nausea, and it should be available in the United States, and it was approved in fairly short order and didn't undergo systematic trials to show the severe effects that thalidomide had on a developing fetus. And because of that circumstance, the Food and Drug Administration has become very rigid in terms of the approval process, and rightly so. But nonetheless, there are efficiencies that can be performed that make this process go more rapidly, and so that it doesn't take 10 to 15 years to lead to approval of medication in the United States. And you see some of that improvement in that process with the approval of some of the newer HIV medications in this last 10 years.
How does a patient find out about this? Do they call your office, or do they?
Well, that's true. I mean, if they have a gastrointestinal condition and they're interested, and they think they will sometimes advertise for a particular trial, if they're interested in participating, they can call our office and register, and then we can provide them updates as new trials become available.
We'd like to thank Dr. Phillips for coming to Dialogue with a Doctor, and thank Jim too, and we hope to have him back, and we learned a lot about clinical research.
All right.